is another holiday. Well, first of all, welcome to our show. Um, Mr. Ettinger is a diplomat, a demographer, an expert on U.S.-Israel relations. And what I wanted to talk to you about today is U.S.-Israel relations nowadays. So perhaps, well, where would you like to start this talk? What would be a good starting point?
Well, I think that the most authentic starting point is most recent poll taken by Gallup poll, which
Mm-hmm.
is probably the most authoritative polling company in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Gallup poll takes every February a poll of country favorability among Americans.
Okay.
Uh, February 2020 documents 74% favorability for Israel, which
Wow.
is the highest ever, other than 1 year, 1991, when we
Uh-huh.
were shell bombed by
Mm-hmm.
Iraqi Scuds.
Mm-hmm.
But we received 74%. To put it in perspective, the Palestinian Authority enjoys meager 23%
Mm-hmm.
favorability. And the
Wow.
question is,
Mm-hmm.
why? Why do we get such a high level of favorability? And I think the answer is first and foremost American history. 1620, the initial pilgrims who came to the US
Mm-hmm.
considered themselves to be the people of the modern day covenant. They
Mm-hmm.
believed that they arrived to the modern day promised land,
Mm-hmm.
and they named at least 1,000 towns and cities and mountains and deserts and national parks in biblical names.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm talking from Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one Jerusalem in Israel, but in the US there are 18
Yes.
Jerusalems,
Mm-hmm.
and there are about 80 Shilohs, etc. But
Mm-hmm.
on top of that, I think there is a recent phenomena whereby US Israel have become very, very robust two-way street,
Mm-hmm.
which is mutually beneficial, and Israel contributes increasingly to the US military and US economy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how does that correlate to the current administration in the United States, the Trump administration?
Well, there's no doubt that so far, President Trump is the only American president who hasn't pressured Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Every president, from Truman all the way to Obama,
Mm-hmm.
pressured Israel sometime very aggressively and
Mm-hmm.
sometime less aggressively.
Yes, including Republican president
Oh
as
yeah,
well, of course.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
George Bush Senior
Uh-huh.
was pretty aggressive, negative on Israel. President Eisenhower was
Mm-hmm.
not exactly enamored with Israel, but
Mm-hmm.
still, in spite of presidential pressure,
Mm-hmm.
the cooperation between the two countries has expanded steadily.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is that US Israel relations, unlike probably any other type of relations, maybe US Britain is an exception,
Mm-hmm.
US Israel relations are bottom up type of relations.
Mm-hmm.
It is the American public which transmits its fundamental appreciation of the Jewish state to
Mm-hmm.
the members of the House of Representatives and the senators, and the legislators impress upon the president the need to expand ties with Israel. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, irrespective of presidential pressure on Israel, ties, especially national security, but also economic, agriculture, irrigation, technology, science, medicine, have
Mm-hmm.
expanded dramatically. And the top reason has been the American realization that Israel has become the number one force multiplier for the United States.
Mhm. And okay, you mentioned the House of Representatives and being a down to top kind of relations, and you know that nowadays in Israel, the main issue that we talk about is the Trump peace plan, and specifically the annexation of the Jordan Valley. How do you think that the representatives and senators react to this peace plan, and how does that influence the chances for actual annexation of Jordan Valley?
Well, first and foremost, in my mind, Israel is an independent country,
Hmm.
which, when it comes to national security, must act unilaterally to the best interest of its survival requirements.
Hmm.
When Ben Gurion fought the War of Independence, he was pressured by the U.S. administration not to dare and so-called occupy parts of the Galilee and
Hmm.
West Jerusalem. And
Hmm.
Ben Gurion went ahead.
Which were according to the UN would have been a part of the Arab state.
Arab state or
Hmm.
Jerusalem was
Hmm.
supposed to be
The,
international, West
hmm.
and East Jerusalem.
Hmm.
Ben Gurion went ahead and made it part of Israel. It didn't earn him any popularity, globally speaking, but
Hmm.
it earned him and Israel huge deal of respect.
Hmm.
People respect leaders who act in accordance with principles and
Hmm.
conviction. When Prime Minister Begin applied the Israeli law to the Golan Heights, he
Hmm.
was punished by the US administration. Shipment of combat planes were suspended. There were threats of economic boycott. And
Hmm.
Mr. Begin, the prime minister,
Hmm.
insisted to maintain the annexation of the Golan
Uh-huh.
Heights. It
And
didn't
that was on a sitting Republican president as well, right?
Right. But
Mm-hmm.
it didn't take more than few weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and a major defense pact between US and Israel was concluded
Mm-hmm.
because the defense requirements of the US in the Middle East, national security requirements of the US in the Middle East transcend by
Mm-hmm.
far the Israeli Arab conflict or the Palestinian issue, which are secondary or tertiary issues when it comes to the overall Middle East. And if
Mm-hmm.
I will jump forward to 2020, when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to facing the anti American Iranian terrorism, the
Mm-hmm.
anti American Sunni Muslim terrorism, when it comes to the shaky pro American Arab regimes and the need to bolster them,
Mm-hmm.
Israel has become the major ally of the US in the Middle East, which
Mm-hmm.
has extended the hand of the Americans in the Middle East without requiring a single American soldier in Israel or around the Israeli borders.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about the Jordan Valley. Well, in terms of security, I think that it is pretty clear the importance of IDF soldiers being there and protecting the security of Israel. My question is, what does it do to the state of Jordan, and what other implications does it have in terms of demography?
When it comes to Israel's control of not only the Jordan Valley, but the whole mountain ridge of
Mm-hmm.
Judea and Samaria, otherwise known as the West Bank, the main question is, does it enhance or does it undermine America's interest? The fact is that should there be a Palestinian state in the West Bank, then it's going to cause the toppling of the pro-American Hashemite regime in Jordan, which
Mm-hmm.
would then create negative ripple effects into Saudi Arabia and the rest of the Arabian Peninsula,
Mm-hmm.
undermining severely America's national security interest. And according the Ayatollahs in Iran,
Hmm.
Putin in Russia, the Chinese, a major bonus. Israel in
Mm-hmm.
the West Bank, Israel on the Golan Heights, constrains the Ayatollahs of Iran, constrains Syria, constrains Russia, and bolsters every single pro American Arab regime in the Middle East. And that's the reason, by the way, that irrespective of the fact that there is no movement at all along the Palestinian issue,
Hmm.
ties between Israel and Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Kuwait, Israel, United Arab Emirates, Israel, Oman, all-time high. They
Right.
all understand that Israel constitutes the most effective life insurance agent in the Middle East, irrespective of the Palestinian issue.
So you're saying actually two things, if I understand correctly. One is that should there be a Palestinian state, it will cause an instability that will start to diffuse from Judea and Samaria into Jordan and then back south to Saudi Arabia and to other places, and will cause a kind of a domino effect of instability. That's the first thing. And the other is that other countries, other Arab countries, understand and recognize Israel as the most important stabilizer of the area. And by not advancing with the Palestinians, it actually causes more stability and ability for Israel to interact with these countries. Is that
One,
correct?
one comment here.
Mm-hmm.
There are two levels of Arab attitudes towards the Palestinians and towards Israel,
Mm-hmm.
the talk and the walk. When it comes to the talk, Arab leaders embrace the Palestinian issue. Arab leaders are supposedly committed to the Palestinian issue. But then when you examine the actual walk, Arab leaders never considered the Palestinian issue to be a crown jewel of their agenda.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, in 1948-49, what we call the War of Independence, when the
Mm-hmm.
Arabs invaded Israel, at the end of the war, Jordan occupied the West Bank,
Mm-hmm.
Egypt occupied Gaza. It never occurred to them to transfer it to the Palestinians.
Mm-hmm.
Never during Israel's confrontations with the Palestinians have we noticed any Arab military or major economic involvement. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason is very simple. Arabs recognize the Palestinian reality, and the reality has been a major destabilizing element. In
Mm-hmm.
1955, the leadership of the Palestinians, Arafat, Mahmoud Abbas, and the rest of them, had
Mm-hmm.
to flee Egypt for subversion and terrorism. In 1966, they fled Syria due to their own terrorism in Syria. In
Mm-hmm.
1970, they were expelled for Jordan because they triggered a civil war in Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
In 1982-83, they were expelled from
From
Lebanon
Lebanon. Mm-hmm.
after turning the country into one huge havoc. And the
Mm-hmm.
worst betrayal of the Palestinians, by the Palestinians, of their Arab host took place in 1990 when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, plundered Kuwait in August of 1990 with the help of three Palestinian battalions. Kuwait was the most hospitable Arab country for the
Mm-hmm.
Palestinians. They absorbed some 400,000 Palestinians.
Mm-hmm.
They transferred huge amount of money, millions and millions of dollars, to the stashed accounts of the Palestinian leaders. And as a result of that betrayal, upon the restoration of the Sheikh Sabah rule in Kuwait after the first Gulf War, the first thing the Kuwaitis did was they expelled almost all Palestinians
Mm-hmm.
from Kuwait. And
Yeah.
until today, as
Mm-hmm.
far as Arabs are concerned, Palestinians have been the role model of intra Arab ingratitude and betrayal, and therefore they
Mm-hmm.
provide the Palestinians with very generous talk, but
Mm-hmm.
absolutely no walk and even negative walk.
Well, Mr. Yoram Ettinger, an expert on US-Israeli relations, I have one final question for you with regards to the annexation of Jordan Valley. Should that happen, we heard even within Israel and outside Israel allegations as if doing such an annexation will cause an apartheid. Now, many of our viewers are Israel supporters, and I'm sure that they are hearing these allegations all the time. Can you please explain what is going to be an annexation and how will it look like?
In a nutshell, ever since Israel was established, we have heard the talk about an Arab demographic time bomb, which is going to demolish Jewish majority. And the fact is that not only isn't there an Arab demographic time bomb, there is unprecedented Jewish demographic tailwind. And I'll just share with you, with the viewers, few data. In 1969, there were 6 more births per Arab woman per Arab women in Israel than Jewish women. Today, Jewish or number of birth per Jewish women exceeds the Arab women, not by much, but it's about 3.17 compared to 3.11. In fact, the number of babies per Jewish woman in Israel exceeds every Arab country other than Yemen, Iraq, and Egypt. And the reason for the high fertility rate among Jews in Israel has to do with very, very high level of optimism, patriotism, and attachment to roots, contrary to Europe, when there is none of that, no patriotism, no optimism, and no roots. In Israel, because of those qualities, optimism, patriotism, and roots, there are more and more babies born. Moreover, when it comes to Palestinian numbers, we have to realize few things. The Palestinians count differently than all other countries. For instance, they include over 400,000 Palestinians who have not been in the area for over a year. Every country deducts residents or citizens who are away for over a year. They are in Jerusalem, some 350,000 Arabs. They are doubly counted. Why doubly counted? Because Israel counts them.
Israel counts them, and the Palestinian counts them, of
They
course.
count them as Palestinian Arabs. The bottom line is that when you count the real number, I'm talking about a study which I've initiated, which goes back to 2004 until today, there is in excess of 1.2 million Arabs in the West Bank who are counted as if they are there, but in fact, they are not there. The bottom line, today we have a very stable Jewish majority of 65% when it comes to the combined area of the West Bank and pre-67 Israel. But to that I would add, the trend is very Jewish, robust net Jewish immigration, while there is annual Arab net emigration, and then the robust Jewish fertility, while the Arab fertility has westernized itself and coming down steadily.
Well, Mr. Yoram Ettinger, thank you so much for joining us today. I urge you, as I urge all our guests and our viewers, to keep the rules, stay safe, and protect your health. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Happy Passover and happy Easter for our Christian viewers.
Okay. Okay.